What happens aback Hollywood's best capricious, brilliant meets television's best acclimatized political announcer in what was declared to be an accepted morning appearance interview. The acknowledgement is television gold that Cypher saw coming. Before we dive into this absurd story, accomplish abiding you hit that subscribe button and let me apperceive in the comments what you anticipate absolutely acquired. Mark Wahlberg, to absolutely lose it on a live television. Trust me, this adventure has twists you won't see coming. The acceptable Morning America flat-bashed with its accepted pre-show activity as producers accolade to agree last-minute details. Mark Wahlberg sat in the bedfellow chair, adjusting his microphone with the accomplished affluence of Edition who had done hundreds of interviews. Above from him, George Stephanopoulos confused through his notes, advancing for what his aggregation had abreast as above-board promotional account for Wahlberg's latest activity film. The cameras formed and Stephanopoulos opened with his brand, able smile. "Good morning, Mark. Thanks for abutting us today." "Good to be here, George," Wahlberg replied, clearing a back in his armchair with that appropriate Boston confidence. "So, let's allocution about your new film. Edition, action-packed abstruseness, breath you, comedy, the absurd hero. Some critics are adage, your arena, the aforementioned appearance, over and over. How do you acknowledge to that?" Wahlberg's announcement, confused slightly, the accessible smile abbreviating about the edges. "Well, George, I anticipate those critics' appetite to absolutely watch the movies before they address their reviews. Anniversary appearance, comedy, brings article altered to the table." Stephanopoulos leaned forward, analysis and, befalling to dig deeper. "But isn't there arrangement here? The working-class guy from Boston who saves the day through dust and determination. Some ability, say your aloof arena, variations of yourself." The flat admirers remained silent, but backstage, producers began to booty notice. This wasn't the ablaze promotional badinage they had planned. You apperceive what? George Wahlberg's articulation agitated a new edge. "Maybe the botheration isn't that I'm arena myself. Maybe the botheration is that Hollywood doesn't apperceive how to address accurate characters anymore. Aback you a bound-up breath, I grew up. Aback you've lived the activity I've lived. Actuality matters." Stephanopoulos nodded, but his announcer instincts were now absolutely engaged. "Speaking of authenticity, let's allocution about your past. You've been accessible about your afflicted youth, the acknowledged issues, the time you served. Do you, anytime anguish that these roles acclaim, abandon, in a way that ability be capricious, accustomed, your platform? The catechism afraid in the air, like a challenge." Wahlberg's jaw anchored visibly, and for a moment, the abandoned complete in the flat was the quiet hum of the cameras. "That's an absorbing way to put it, George," Wahlberg said, his articulation deceptively calm. "Irresponsible, let me ask you something. Except you anytime been in a bearing's breath you had two action for your life. Have you anytime lived in a adjacency? Breath abandon was an article you saw in movies. But article that bent whether you fabricated it home safe." Stephanopoulos maintained his composure, but there was a new restriction in his posture. "Mark, I'm not analytic your claimed experiences. I'm allurement about the albatross that comes with actuality, a role model." "Role model," Wahlberg laughed. "But there was no amusement in it, George. I never asked to be anybody's role model. What I did ask for was of adventitious, to a quaint belief that matter. Belief about absolute bodies, adverse absolute problems. But guys like you appetite to abate, aggregate to some political talking point. I don't anticipate allurement about amusing albatross is abbreviation annihilation to politics." Steph countered his own articulation, accepting intensity. "You accept millions of fans, abounding of them adolescent people. Don't you anticipate you owe them something?" Wahlberg leaned advanced in his chair, closing the ambit amid them. "What I owe them is honesty. What I owe them is assuming them that you can accomplish mistakes. You can appear from annihilation and you can still body article meaningful. What I don't owe them is assuming to be absolute for the abundance of bodies who've never faced absolute adversity." The flat had gone absolutely quiet. Alike the camera, operators seemed frozen, borderline whether to accumulate rolling or cut to commercial. Stephanopoulos apprenticed on his announcer training cardinal any affair about the growing tension. "But Mark, don't you see the contradiction? You accumulation from assuming abandon while accompanying claiming to be a absolute influence." That was the breaking point. Wahlberg stood up abruptly, his armchair rolling backward. "Prophet, you appetite to allocution about astrologer, George. Let's allocution about how account networks accumulation from abhorrence and division. Let's allocution about how political commentators accumulation from befitting bodies affronted and divided. At Atomic Aback, I accomplish a movie, bodies they're watching fiction." Stephanopoulos remained seated, but his articulation rose to bout Wahlberg's intensity. "That's not the aforementioned thing, and you apperceive it. We're talking about your albatross as an entertainer. No, George, we're talking about your charge to actualize altercation breath. None exists. Wahlberg advanced back. This was declared to be about my movie, but you've angry it into some affectionate of political hit job. The host's able address began. To crack, nobody's administering a hit job. These are accepted questions that any austere announcer would ask. Austere journalist Wahlberg's articulation agitated a alarming bend now. Is that what you alarm yourself? Because from breadth, I'm standing. You are tending like addition talking arch aggravating to account credibility by disturbing bottomward addition, who absolutely congenital article from nothing. Stephanopoulos stood up now. The pretense of a affable account absolutely abandoned. I've been accomplishing journalism aback afore you were authoritative movies. Mark, I don't charge lectures on candor from addition whose abstraction of appearance development is acquirements. New means to bandy punches on screen. The insult landed. Like a concrete blow, Wahlberg's face ablaze red. And for a moment, the aloft street fighter from Dorchester was arresting beneath the Hollywood veneer. Is that what you absolutely think? Wahlberg asked, his articulation bottomward to a advancing whisper. That I'm aloof, some muscle-bound idiot who got lucky. Stephanopoulos straightened his tie, a frayed action that betrayed his growing anxiety. Acceptance is advanced to advanced journalistic authority. Mark, I never said you were an idiot, but you can't abjure that your career has been congenital on an actual specific blazon of character. You're right, George, Wahlberg said. Demography, a footfall, afterpiece to the board that affared them. My career has been congenital on arena characters that represent article real. Characters that appearance alive bodies they matter, that their belief are account-telling. What's your career congenital on allurement, antic questions to bodies who absolutely actualize things. The flat aggregation exchanged afraid glances. This was ambiguous far aloft annihilation they had able for, and the bartering breach wasn't appointed for addition 8 minutes. My career is congenital on captivation, accessible abstracts, accountable. Stephanopoulos replied, his articulation steady, but his duke white as he absorbed his basis cards. A back edition has the belvedere you have. They should apprehend scrutiny. Answerable for what exactly? Wahlberg's Boston emphasis was acceptable, added arresting with anniversary word. For absorbing people, for giving them belief that appearance them they can affected their circumstances, or are you aggravating to ascendancy me answerable for accepting the adventurousness to accomplish acceptance advancing from the streets? Stephanopoulos acquainted the account bottom abroad from him, but his advancing instincts kicked in. I'm aggravating to accept an honest chat about the letters your films send. Abnormally to adolescent men who abilities see abandon as a band-aid to their problems. Violence as a solution. Wahlberg laughed bitterly. George, except you absolutely watched any of my movies, or did you aloof apprehend the artifice summaries your analysis aggregation handed you? Because if you had watched them, you'd apprehend that in about every distinct one, abandon is apparent as a aftermost resort, article that immersement, the bodies who use it, but it's still glorified, isn't it? Stephanopoulos pressed. The hero consistently wins, through force, through fighting. What affectionate of bulletin does that send? Wahlberg befuddled his arch in frustration. The bulletin it sends is that sometimes, acceptable bodies accept to angle up to bad people. That sometimes, the arrangement fails. Accustomed bodies accept to acquisition the adventuresomeness to do what's right. But you wouldn't accept that, would you, George? Because you've spent your accomplished career cautiously abaft a desk. Allurement questions, but never accepting to alive with the consequences. The claimed advance hit its mark. Stephanopoulos is able, accord, absurd visibly. That's absolutely unfair, and you apperceive it. Journalism is about allurement, difficult questions, not about active every acquaintance personally. Is it though? Wahlberg challenged, because it seems to me like journalism has become about creating narratives that fit whatever calendar sells. The best advertising. You came into this account with a venture already accounting in your head, didn't you? I came into this account able to ask accepted questions about your assignment and its impact. Stephanopoulos advanced back. If you can't handle that akin of scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be accomplishing publicity. The advancement that he couldn't handle burden was like bouncing a red banderole in advance of a bull. Wahlberg's eyes flashed with 18-carat anger. Handle. Scrutiny. George, I've been scrutinized my absolute activity by cops, by judges, by critics, by bodies who anticipate they apperceive who I am because of breadth I came from. The aberration amid me and you is that a back bodies analyze me. I don't. Adumbrate abaft some affected objectivity. I own my choices. And what about the best to airing abroad from this interview? Stephanopoulos asked, his articulation accustomed a attenuate challenge. Because that's what you're accomplishing appropriate now, isn't it? Active abroad, aback the questions get too tough. The allegation, chock-full, Wahlberg cold. For a moment, he stood altogether still, processing the association that he was a coward. Aback, he battened again. His articulation was alarmingly quiet. You anticipate I'm active away. Stephanopoulos sensed he had regained some control. I anticipate you're acclimated to interviews, breath bodies, lob you softball questions about your conditioning, accepted, in your latest movie. I anticipate a back edition asks you to anticipate alarmingly about your work. You get defensive. Wahlberg refreshed the chat like he was tasting article bitter. George, you appetite to see defensive. Arresting is what you're accomplishing. Appropriate now. Ambuscade bathed your announcer accreditation to abstain acceptance that you absolved into this account attractive for a fight. I'm accomplishing my job, Stephanopoulos insisted. Your job. Wahlberg's articulation rose again. Your job is declared to be allegorical people, not creating ball for ratings. But that's what this is absolutely about, isn't it? You charge article arguable to appear because your appearance is bleeding admirers to alive casework and amusing media. The allegation addled a budding to home, and Stephanopoulos' able affectation slipped completely. That's ridiculous. Acceptable Morning America has been the top morning appearance for years. Has it though? Wahlberg apprenticed his advantage. Because from what I hear, you guys are disturbing to breach accordant in a apple breadth bodies can get their account from anywhere. So you allure me on acquisitive I'll say, article brainless so you can accept your viral moment. Cipher capital. You two say annihilation, stupid, Mark. We capital you to accept an able chat about your work. Able conversation. Wahlberg scoffed. This isn't intelligent. George, this is you aggravating to accomplish abuse because you anticipate it'll get you trending on Twitter. Well, congratulations. Your allegedly activity to get your wish. Stephanopoulos accomplished the account had absolutely derailed, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. If this is what passes for address from Hollywood's archmen, afresh maybe the critics accept a point about the accompaniment of entertainment. The arrogant emphasis was the final straw. Wahlberg's easily clenched into fists at his sides, and anybody in the flat could see him angry at the actuation to do article that would end his career. You apperceive what, George? You're appropriate about one thing. This chat is over. Wahlberg began to deliver his microphone, but Stephanopoulos wasn't finished. So that's it. Back, the chat gets challenging. Mark Wahlberg, aloof, walks away. I assumption that's the affectionate of hero your movies absolutely celebrate. Addition, who quits back things get difficult. The words chock-full Wahlberg asleep in his tracks. His Duke froze on the microphone blow, and slowly, deliberately, he angry aback to face the host. The attending, in his eyes, fabricated several aggregation. Associates booty and benumbed, footfall backward. What did you aloof say? Wahlberg's articulation was almost aloft a whisper, but it agitated above the bashful flat like a threat. Stephanopoulos knew he had above a line, but his journalistic ego wouldn't let him retreat. I said, maybe this is who you absolutely are. Addition, who talks boxy but runs a back-faced with absolute scrutiny. Absolute scrutiny. Wahlberg confused aback against the account area, but this time he didn't sit down. He stood anon in advance of Stephanopoulos' desk, looming over the built-in host. You appetite absolute scrutiny. George, let's allocution about absolute scrutiny. Let's allocution about growing up with nothing, watching your company die or abandon into the system. Let's allocution about authoritative mistakes so bad you anticipate you'll never balance from them, but award a way to body article elusive anyway. Mark, amuse, sit down, Stephanopoulos said, but his articulation lacked its beforehand authority. No, I don't anticipate I will, Wahlberg replied. See, you allege me a quitter, George, and that's article I can't let slide, because if there's one affair I've never been in my absolute life, it's a quitter. Aback, I was 15 years old, accepting arrested. I didn't quit. Aback, I was aggravating to accomplish it in music and anybody said I was a joke. I didn't quit. Aback, I transitioned to acting and critics said I'd never be taken seriously. I didn't quit. The affection in his articulation was magnetic. Alike, the adverse flat admirers begin themselves aptitude forward, bent up in his words, acceptance the afflictive tension. But here's what absolutely gets me. Wahlberg continued, his articulation accepting momentum. You sit abaft that board in your big-ticket clothing with your Ivy League education, and you adjudicator me for the choices I've made. You catechism whether I'm an acceptable role model, whether my assignment has value, whether I deserve the success I've earned. But what accept you built? George, what accept you created that didn't abide afore you came along? Stephanopoulos approved to interrupt. Mark, I anticipate you're confounding the purpose of journalism. No, I accept perfectly. Wahlberg, cut him off. The purpose of journalism acclimated to be allegorical the public. Now it's about disturbing bodies bottomward for sport. It's about award the affliction accessible estimation of aggregate and active with it because battle gets clicks. That's not what this is, Stephanopoulos protested, but his articulation articulate, weak, alike to his own ears, afresh. What is it? Wahlberg demanded. Because from breadth I'm standing. This looks like a hit job. You aride me actuality beneath apocryphal pretenses. spent 15 account, aggravating to accomplish me attending bad, and now, you appetite to alarm me a craven because I won't comedy forth with your game. The flat administrator was aimlessly signaling to cut to commercial, but the cameraman kept rolling. Analysis they were witnessing article unprecedented. Stephanopoulos fabricated one, after most advanced to achieve control. Mark, I anticipate your actuality anytime acute about accepted questions, apropos your access on accepted culture. Anytime sensitive. Wahlberg's beam was acrid and bitter. George, let me acquaint you about sensitive acute is growing up poor and accepting bodies except you're brainless because of your accent. Acute is alive your ass off to become acknowledged and accepting bodies aspect it to luck. Acute is aggravating to use your belvedere to acquaint elusive belief in accepting some talking archibate your absolute career to guy who throws punches. I never said that, Stephanopoulos protested. You didn't accept to say it directly. Wahlberg replied, it was in every question, every insinuation, every arrogant animadversion about my background. You apperceive what the absolute irony is, George. You allege my movies of announcement violence, but you're the one who came in actuality attractive for a fight. The accuracy of that account afraid in the air like an accusation. Alike, Stephanopoulos seemed to apprehend how far he had pushed things aloft, like a accustomed interview. Look, Mark, he said, aggravating to acquisition, some average ground. Maybe we got off on the amiss bottom here. Why don't we alpha over an allocution about your film? But Wahlberg wasn't accepting it. Alpha over, George. You don't get to absorb 20 account aggravating to breach. Me bottomward and a fresh ask for a duver, because you accomplished it's not arena well. This is who you are. This is what you do. You body your career on added people's discomfort. That's not fair, Stephanopoulos said, but alike he could apprehend how alveolate it sounded. Fair. Wahlberg befuddled his arch in disbelief. You appetite to allocution about fair. Is it fair that you get to sit there and adjudicator my absolute life's assignment based on some agreed narrative? Is it fair that you get to catechism my appearance while ambuscade abaft, the pretense of objectivity? The host approved one added. Time to deliver the situation. Mark, I'm apologetic if you acquainted, attacked. That wasn't my intention. Your ambition doesn't matter. George, what affairs is what you did, and what you did was allure me, actuality, to advance my sinian afresh, absorb the accomplished time, aggravating to accomplish me, attending like some affectionate, of agitated blackmailer who doesn't deserve success. I never alleged you a thug, Stephanopoulos said weakly. You didn't accept to, Wahlberg replied. It was in every loaded question, every agnostic look, every arrogant tone. You apperceive what's funny. You're afraid about the letters my movies send. But what bulletin are you sending appropriate now, that if you appear from the streets, if you accomplish mistakes in your past, if you allocution with a Boston accent, you don't deserve respect? The flat had gone absolutely silent. Anybody present knew they were witnessing article that would be talked about for years to come. Wahlberg looked anon into the capital camera. You apperceive what? I anticipate bodies are acute abundant to accept the aberration amid ball in reality. I anticipate they're acute abundant to acknowledge belief about redemption, about additional chances, about accustomed bodies accomplishing amazing things. But allegedly, some bodies in the media anticipate the admirers is too brainless to accomplish those distinctions. He angry aback to Stephanopoulos, who looks abate somehow, beneath, by the confrontation. So here's what's activity to happen. George, I'm activity to airing out of actuality, and your activity to accept your viral moment. Bodies are activity to watch this blow and altercate about who was appropriate and who was wrong. But at the end of the day, I'll still be authoritative movies that amount to people, and you'll still be sitting abaft this desk, attractive for the abutting being to breach down. Wahlberg accomplished for his microphone again, but this time Stephanopoulos didn't try to stop him. One added thing, Wahlberg said as he unclipped the device. Next time you appetite to accept an honest chat about my work, try absolutely watching it first, you ability apprentice article about the aberration amid glorifying abandon and assuming the absolute amount of the choices we make. With that, he abandoned the microphone on Stephanopoulos' board and absolved against the flat exit. The cameras followed him until he abolished through the door. Abrogation, abaft a abashed host, and a flat abounding of bodies who knew they had aloof, witnessed television history. Stephanopoulos sat abandoned at his board for several continued, abnormal afore, assuredly attractive, into the camera, and saying, will be appropriate aback, afterwards this bartering break. But anybody knew that annihilation would any time be absolutely the aforementioned afterwards what had aloof happened on a live television. What did you anticipate of that atomic confrontation? Did Mark Wahlberg go too far, or was George Stephanopoulos' allurement for it with his advancing questioning? Drop your thoughts in the comments beneath and accomplish. Abiding to subscribe for added absurd belief of celebrities accident they're air conditioned on a live television.